Yesterday, the Judiciary, members of the Judiciary led by the Chief Justice, the Honorable Mr. Brian Sykes, and flanked by the President of the Court of Appeal, the Honorable Mrs. Justice Marva MacDonald Bishop, and other judges in the Judiciary, they held a conversation and they invited members of the media. I regret I couldn't make it because as you know, I was here yesterday, and we also had an outside broadcast which dealt with some very important planning and development issues with the Planning Institute of Jamaica in disaggregating data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica is pointing us in direction for immediate and sustained action because of the decrease that we're seeing in population growth. And so the triangle with which we've become accustomed since the 1970s, where at the tip of the triangle, the very top part, if you imagine the triangle, we have people who are members of the older age cohort. And then in the middle, those between certain ages. And then at the base, which is a broader base, are the younger people. And that is a healthy shape. But what we are seeing now, based on the decrease in population growth, the shape is changing. And it is crying out for immediate rethinking of policies and putting things in place to cater for what will be an overwhelmingly older population and a very small young or younger population. On top of that, there are a lot of risks to which we appear to be predisposed by our cultural habits, including eating, so non-communicable diseases, plus a greater aging population, all sorts of potentially Category 5 style disasters are ahead of us. So that outside broadcast was so important that despite my desire to bring portions of this important conversation that the judiciary held, I didn't get the chance neither to see, hear, nor to bring it in the broadcast yesterday. Needless to say, so soon as I could, after the broadcast, I had the chance of listening to some of it. I haven't got through all of it yet. I believe I got to the point where the chief parish judge has started outlining the all of the gains made, where we are with the backlog, which has been substantially eliminated, maybe to about 5% or thereabouts, if any, in the parish courts. Yeah, so I will go back to listening to all of that a bit later on. But this conversation is important, listeners, because we are seeing a change in terms of accountability for this important, and as the Chief Justice says, co-equal arm of government. It is interesting too, because the Chief Justice, though not naming a member of the executive, specifically made it absolutely clear in his, it's a rebuke in this case of a sentiment expressed by Delroy Chuck, Justice Minister. He made it clear that it is the role of the judiciary to interpret the law. It is the role of the legislature to ensure that it communicates its intention by clear words put in the law. And the law is as the judiciary interprets it. So if you think that there is some interpretation which you didn't intend, then you're going to have to go back and change the wording so that what you believe you intend is interpreted in the clear words that you use. So the Justice Minister is chairing this child diversion, this committee dealing with child diversion. And last week, in a sort of bizarre sitting that they had, because not much went on in that session, and I had a sneak peek into it, I heard, coming almost at the closing of the session, where the Justice Minister commented by saying that a lot of judges don't seem to understand the Child Diversion Act. He's spoken to quite a few of them, he said, and there's some misunderstanding. That statement was brought in the news. I'm not sure if it was recently repeated. I'm seeing Liver and Barrett's article this morning where it says that the Chief Justice has made the comments a day after Chuck asserted that some judges appear to be interpreting the Child Diversion Act by compelling minors charged with certain crimes to enter a plea of guilty before they are directed to a diversion program offered by the government. So I don't know if Mr. Chuck repeated those sentiments. That be what? Wednesday in his Child Diversion Committee. Perhaps he did, which is why the article is stated in this way. But I certainly heard it last week. So what we're seeing, I think, is an interesting and different sort of pushback from the judiciary in its extrajudicial comments based on sentiments being expressed by, at least in this instance, a member of the executive. And there's another pushback by the executive again concerning the issue of funding for the judiciary, because Mr. Chuck has been saying that the money to do whatever is needed has been made available. Whatever the judiciary is asking for, the money has been made available. And it is because of procurement issues why there has not been full disbursement in many instances. But more recently, issues have arisen concerning not only maintenance, but where there is need for substantial repair of infrastructure. In this instance, concerning damage to courthouses following Hurricane Melissa, particularly in Western Jamaica. The Chief Justice has laid it out in very clear terms that he's not prepared to settle for a mere allocation to the Court Administration Division going through the Justice Ministry, because the Court Administration Division is now on statutory footing, and the director of the Court Administration Division is the permanent secretary within the Court Administration Division, because that office is on par in terms of remuneration with a permanent secretary. And on top of that, when you look in the law, the director is the chief accounting individual under the law. And as I listen to the Chief Justice, I'm saying, I don't think I've ever looked at that law at all that brought the Court Administration Division into being. And I certainly will look, because he has advised us to. Don't take it from me, go and read it yourself. And if it says so, and it is not now happening, are we likely at some point in time to see some sort of judicial review of the entire entity, where what the Chief Justice has been asking for and what is now provided by the law, it actually will have to be done, in that the Court Administration Division is not to be going through the Ministry of Justice to get funding to do all of the work that is to be done, but it is going to get its own budget, which represents administratively independence of the judiciary, which is something he reminds us is not of recent times really, but it's a principle that is well ingrained and documented by one of us and practiced not only in near jurisdictions, but those afar as well. But I couldn't help but wonder if we're likely to see at some point in time the director of the Court Administration Division literally asking for a review of this, and for the government to be compelled to make available sums of money independent of the Ministry of Justice so that it can do what it needs to do, and not to be guided by the relationship that is existing between the Chief Justice of the day and whoever the minister happens to be. Fascinating. But if you didn't hear the Chief Justice in his upbraiding of the unnamed minister, but who we know to be Mr. Delroy Chuck, then here he is reminding the nation that it is the judiciary who has the sole responsibility for interpreting the law. And I think, as well, as I listen to the Chief Justice, as delicately as he tried to put it, but delicately stern, if those can go together, I can't help but think that what is happening, it's a looking at what is taking place elsewhere and just ensuring that nobody gets any ideas here, because the independence of the judiciary is sacrosanct. Yeah? And ministers don't get to make law or to dictate how the law is to be interpreted from extra ministerial statements. Yeah? So we saw the decision in the United States recently on the tariffs, and irrespective of what the decision of the Supreme Court is, we have seen how the decision is being interpreted, and whatever statements people think it appropriate to make, then they just go ahead and make it nonetheless. But our judiciary in Jamaica is asserting it is our province to interpret the law. Here's the Chief Justice.
In 2019, we are now in the second strategic plan, 2024 to 2028. And that was influenced in part by the International Consortium for Court Excellence, which in turn developed the International Framework for Court Excellence, which was designed to create a practical guide.
Welcome to
Speaking to values performance areas for court excellence, and utilizing concepts and tools that tribunals and courts implement to improve service delivery. Out of that has come something known as global measures, and that is what we use to measure the performance of courts. Now, the measurement of the court's performance is not an end in itself, but it is used to determine how effectively we are delivering legal services, because essentially that's what courts do. We resolve disputes and other matters that persons are either unable or unwilling to resolve themselves. So we need to be able to determine precisely the disposition of cases, the time that it takes to dispose of cases, and of course there's a qualitative dimension to it as well. So it's not just the numbers in and of themselves, but how we do what we do and its impact on our citizens. It is also a reflection of the fact that the judiciary takes very seriously its role as a co-equal, emphasis on the co-equal arm of government. So the executive has its functions, it sets policy, that is the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. You have the legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate. They pass laws, and the only institution established by the Constitution to authoritatively and definitively interpret the Constitution and the laws and to develop the common law is the judiciary, not the executive. And so it is important to have these reminders, because sometimes there may be comments made and persons may be left with the incorrect impression or idea. So for example, within recent times with regard to child diversion, there has been a view expressed that the judges are misinterpreting the law. And I wish to remind the members of the public that everybody is entitled to a view, but the only place where that can be argued and acted upon is in a court of law. So nobody, regardless of the office that they hold, can dictate to the judiciary how the law is to be interpreted. Judges are guided by the actual text of the statute, not by the intention that persons may have in their brain. And the text of the statute is the collective will of the Parliament, comprising the House of Representatives and the Senate. So ministerial statements are not part of the law, and no judge acting in accordance with the judicial oath and the Constitution can take any account of that. If the view is that the law is unclear, then there's a mechanism. The mechanism is to go to Parliament, change the law to make clear what it is said to be the policy of the legislation. Because during the legislative process, a bill goes to Parliament, and as it goes through the process, the other members of Parliament, other than the promoter of the bill, they have the right and indeed the obligation to make their views known on the content of the bill. And arising out of that process, the content and the wording may change. And so there are techniques that judges bring to bear on the interpretation of legislation, and the interpretation of legislation always begins with the actual words used in the section, and the section is interpreted in the context of the law generally, and the judge has other techniques that he or she uses.
Yes. So the co-equal arm of government is reminding the Justice Minister, you don't get to interpret. You're piloting the bill. You make sure that what you intend, you express it in words so that when the words are interpreted, then they come out the way you actually intend. Yeah. Not for the first time we've had something like this. And this sort of upbraiding, it is a little uncomfortable, perhaps necessary, but uncomfortable. You know, I'd love to hear some more on how the Chief Justice envisions the matter of the funding of the courts. How is it to work? Perhaps it came in the question and answer, which I've not yet completed listening to. And why I'm interested in it is this. It can get so uncomfortable if there are contractual disputes. If we do get to that stage, a dispute between the director of Court Administration Division and a particular contractor, or there are allegations of breach of contract such that a claim has to be brought by any one of the disputing parties. And it will become difficult for the public looking on to sort of deal with the perceptions of bias, not actual bias, but perceived bias because of whosoever the litigants will be. So is it that the director of the Court Administration Division can be named as a litigant because of the role that that person takes under the Court Administration Division Act? Or do we just revert to taking the AG as a defendant in those matters? Perhaps when I do have a look at the law, then some of those questions can be answered. But I know the Chief Justice, having looked at it and is into accountability, maybe we can flesh through in a conversation exactly how will that work when disputes arise, as disputes will, because that is just the nature of how dealings go when you're creating legal relations between one entity and the next. There's more, but time is up on me.
Join us next time for Emily's Views on the Hotline.